All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to our first ever podcast for student ministry for transit. If you're a middle schooler, Inside Out, if you're a high schooler, we actually just launched this past weekend our first episodes. So Wired if you are in transit, and then Reset for Inside Out. And we're just going to talk about that a little further here, which is kind of fun. Matt, you and I were talking about ahead of time, like usually for a message, we somewhat know what we're going to say ahead of time.
Not really,
You never know what's really going to come out on the stage, but I mean,
not till the last minute.
Yeah. But in this setting, I really don't know what we're going to talk about. So hopefully this is helpful to people. Hopefully, if not, we'll kill it.
That was a great setup to that. So
yeah, I'm feeling very confident. So anyways, if we haven't met before, my name's Jordan. I'm the student ministry director at North Point. We have Matt with us today, who is our middle school director, our transit director. We have Adrine Vartanian, who is an incoming senior at Rouse, which is stupid because in my head, like you're in sixth grade still, which I know you're not.
Me too.
But it's just
and
like that
she's also a now 8th grade leader for transit, which is really cool.
Yep.
So she's amazing.
And directing some of these episodes, which is cool, segments in different parts also. And then we have Mel B, also a senior in high school,
also
hip hop extraordinaire, groups director here at North Point. So basically, we just have some fairly random conversations in the office, and we said we should just record some of those sometimes. We're like, there's all the time we're getting to a random topic and debate something, and we're like, man, I just wish we had a camera. So that's basically what we're doing here. Like, for example, I don't know, 3 minutes before we started rolling, Chloe's also in the room right now, who's our logistics coordinator in student ministry. And we were having a little bit of a debate because Chloe just had to get her tire fixed.
This morning.
Yeah. And Chloe's single, and Chloe met a guy at Discount Tire. And so the girls are kind of excited because the guy gave her a discount on her tire.
Yeah.
And so they're fairly convinced, like, Chloe's in.
Yeah. Where'd she go again?
That's part of the Discount Tire.
Yeah, she went to Discount Tire. She got
yeah. So if you couldn't pick up, Matt and I were like a little skeptical.
Yeah.
Because she got a discount at Discount Tire. But the girls are like, she's getting married next week.
Oh, for sure.
So I would just love to hear some outside opinions. You know, if y'all are watching this on YouTube, comment or DM us or whatever if you're on Instagram. Just I don't know. Maybe Matt and I are wrong, and maybe Chloe is in.
We could be. Who knows?
Yeah. So
you are for sure. What you need to know is that Chloe is really, really pretty. That's really important to the story.
Thank you for that commentary. I appreciate the addition there. Okay, we do have important things to talk about, though. Not that that's not Chloe's
that is
important.
important.
That is very.
We also have some important things.
We have other things to talk about.
Other things.
Yeah. Okay. So here's some our other things. So for both Wired and Reset, we introduced this concept, this topic of Numb, because we said everybody, pretty much whatever age you are, whatever stage of life you are, these last several months, we've all been looking forward to some things and hoping some things that are going to change, and then they don't, or they get canceled, or they get taken off calendar. And you do that enough times, like you get excited enough times, you have, get hopeful enough times, and then it keeps getting canceled. At some point, it just gets hard, to keep staying hopeful. It gets hard to get excited again. And I think there's, for a lot of people, just this kind of numb feeling. I don't, for some of us, it's anxiety. For some of us, it's depression. But I mean, for a lot of us, it's just kind of this like stuck, like I don't really know what to get excited about. I don't know what to look forward to. Every day kind of feels the same. Maybe school will come back, maybe it won't, maybe there'll be football, maybe there won't, and I'm almost don't even care at this point. There's a lot of that kind of vibe. So we just wanted to talk about that because I think a lot of people are experiencing it, and a lot of the first couple episodes were about that. Adrine, just because we have, you here in part of this conversation, not that you have to represent all the thousands of students in, Leander ISD and Liberty Hill ISD and Georgetown ISD and Round Rock ISD and all that, but if you could just represent them all for a second, what have the last couple months been like for you? I mean, even thinking back to March, like if you can just kind of travel back to March, for me, that's already kind of a surreal time. Like I remember when South by got canceled, and I thought that was super dramatic at the time. And I was like, you kidding me? It's going to be over in like 2 weeks. And then here we are. But I'm just wondering what that was like for you. Like when you remember going on spring break, did you guys think you were coming back in a week?
For sure. I definitely thought I was coming back that next week. And then there was like talk about it getting extended like a couple days. And I was like, okay, maybe 1 or 2. And then 1 or 2 turned into 5 months and online school. And it was just, I would definitely say it was disappointing. Just as a junior, I was looking forward to my first prom. I bet you some like the 8th graders were looking forward to like that last moment with all their friends before they like split to multiple different high schools. The seniors before they all go off to college. Like I think overall it was a very disappointing time just because everything at the end of the year that we always like look forward to got canceled.
Yep.
I remember when camp got canceled, that announcement, heartbroken.
Yep.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. I think Matt and I both shed tears over that together.
Man tears. Yeah.
Yeah. Man tears. A man tear.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the first like big, were you excited at first? Not, to say, oh, I'm excited about a pandemic, but we were like, oh, like spring break is extended. Was that at first like, oh, this is kind of cool or exciting? Or were you like right away, like nervous, panicked, anxious? Like what was your emotions like early on in this process?
Early on, I would definitely say I was excited just because I was like, ooh, finals getting pushed back, AP tests. But then after like the first week, I was like, okay, I need to go back. Like,
done with this.
I'm over it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the first like big thing that dropped? The first like, man, I was really looking forward to this. And
I think for me, that was prom, just because like junior year, like you finally are an upperclassman, you get to be a part of like the big fun things. And like I already went prom dress shopping, had my dress, had my shoes. I was like ready for prom and then got taken away.
Yep. Well, I think that's what's adding to a lot of this for people is there's a lot of things that are getting taken away that you can't go get back. There's like, you can't go back and have a junior or senior prom or, graduation or a last camp, whatever it is for so many of us. There's a lot of these things that are they're kind of feeling like permanent losses, Do you feel some of that numbness now, like thinking about the fall? Like, is it hard for you to get excited about things in the fall because you have that wariness that something's going to get canceled or things will change again? Or, how are you feeling like looking at the next couple months?
For sure. Going into senior year, I am already I'm expected to be disappointed just for things to get canceled. And this was like my last year, so it was supposed to be like the fun year. And I like purposely took easy classes so I could like enjoy this year. And just right off the bat, I already know since like we're starting virtual altogether, I already know it's not going to be the same. And like football season definitely won't be the same. Shows have been canceled. I can already tell like things are going to get pushed back even more. So I'm just already ready to like be disappointed.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I've been thinking about your class a lot because I was thinking originally the class of 2020 is like the hardest hit group of almost any age group, in the world, thinking about all of the marker moments that are canceled and then, their transition into college being impacted. But now I'm thinking about your class and being like, we just don't know what the future looks like right now. This could be, your whole upperclassmen years, junior and senior year that are impacted. So you guys are still in this. There's still a lot of that uncertainty, a lot of that numb feeling, if you will. Sure. I think it could be helpful at the beginning of our conversation to give a definition to this word, numb, because Brene Brown has an awesome definition. She's also a Longhorn, just so you guys know. If you didn't know that, so it makes her extra amazing. But I think it's really helpful to think about the way she kind of describes it, because she says any activity that we use to numb our feelings so that we don't experience vulnerability falls in the numbing category. So these activities can include, but are not limited to, alcohol, mindlessly scrolling social media, staying super busy, eating bad foods or sugary foods, binge watching shows, online, shopping, et cetera, et cetera. And she says none of these things are inherently bad on their own, but when used as an escape from feeling real emotion, they can turn into real issues. And the reason I like that she uses the word vulnerability in there is because I just think it speaks to our season. She says vulnerability, it's not weakness. Vulnerability is uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure, which in this season, we're filled with uncertainty, and it does feel vulnerable to get excited about something right now. You almost feel like naive or something, and something's going to get taken away. But she says the issue is we cannot selectively numb emotions. So when we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions, right? She says literally here, she says, by numbing ourselves to vulnerability, we also numb ourselves to love, belonging, creativity, and empathy. So that's a big deal. When we talk about this and why we'd want to spend 2 weeks on it, if you are unable to experience those things like love, connection to others, your ability to be creative, that's kind of, you're talking meaning of life stuff right there. Not to get too dramatic, but that's super, super core to that. Mel, I know you and I were talking before this a little bit about how that word, it can be difficult to know, like, am I numbing or am I not? Because of the fact that numbing doesn't look the same for everybody based on, personality types, based on the fact that none of those things are actually bad. It's not like Netflix is bad or shopping is bad or eating junk food is bad, So,
favorite things.
How would you even guide that conversation a little bit to be like, okay, now I'm, beating myself up for everything I'm doing, and that's not what we want either. How would you kind of speak into that?
Yeah, well, as you guys know, I am a flaming 2 on the Enneagram. So I am all about feelings, but I'm all about everybody else's feelings because my feelings are gross and I don't need them. And I like to pack them in, because it's me, like a little sparkly box, and bury them very, very deep. and numb in whatever way I can. And I think, like, we were talking about all the different personality types. I think it's kind of almost like that vintage phrase where you would say, pick your poison. Like, there's so many things on that list that I think are so specific to different personality types, for sure. And so I think, like, kind of making the exploration of yourself and figuring out, like, dang it, like, why can't I deal with what's going on? Or what do I do? Like, what is my trigger? Because like you were saying, I think it's like a little different for everybody. For me, it's anxiety for sure, because I don't want anyone else to be burdened by my anxiety. Like, I want to pack it up and I want to, like, take care of it. I don't want anyone to take care of me. And I think for everybody, that's just going to be something that's like a little bit different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Because we were talking about, I mean, at this table, we have 2 Enneagram 2s. We have an 8. That is an 8.
I'm different.
Sometimes they get a bad rep, but healthy 8s change the world. And, you know, and then
eights.
I don't know if I'm healthy or
You're
not.
so strong. Love it.
What am I?
yeah.
Help.
Yeah. And, you know, I think Enneagram is interesting. It's just one of many personality tests. I think if, you know, you are a middle schooler or a high schooler, you know, watching this, take it every couple of years, because it's going to change as you're growing up and discovering who you are. You know, there's probably a certain age you have to reach before you can really start to even have some of those conversations. But I just know amongst this table, like, it's super different. The way, like, we would, you know, as a 3, I'm basically an achiever. So that means I find a lot of identity in, you know, my performance. Like, do I accomplish tasks? Do people, you know, notice my performance, that kind of thing. So when I get, like, tired and exhausted, I just want to, like, completely disconnect. You know, I turned into the unhealthy qualities of a 9 on the scale. And so I just, like, I don't want to be around people. You know, I will, you know, binge, you know, Netflix endlessly or whatever. You know, I've watched 8 season shows and, you know, a couple months before, and I'm like, oh man, like, that's just like a red flag to say, like, hey, you're tired, you're exhausted, you need to talk to somebody, you need to get some help. You know, and so I think it's a little different for all of us. But do you, any of you guys, just, you know, just really open for the table, like, have any kind of guidelines to say, okay, what's the line? Because again, I'm not telling you, like, cancel your Netflix membership, don't ever play video games, don't ever eat unhealthy food again. You know, do any of you guys have some like guidelines to say, well, what is numbing versus what is just, oh, this is actually just fun. Like, this is just life-giving. This is energizing for me. What do you guys say to that?
Wow, that was a really good question. Yeah, no, I think there's a couple things. I think the phrase you were just using, life-giving, is, like, really important. Like, so identifying that, right? So I think especially in this season, a lot of us have gone through a lot of different things, right? And, you know, a lot of the similar things got canceled off the calendar for a lot of us. But when we understand the difference between just escaping in a moment and trying to make a quick fix, and then also, like, doing something that's life-giving. So for me, like, if I'm going through something and I got to get my mind off something, like, sure, I'll go to the gym or I'll go on a walk or anything like that. And to me, that's, like, life-giving. That's really, really good. But I also have the tendency to, like, go be on TikTok for, like, 4 hours and go be on Netflix for a lot of hours. But, like, those things in and of itself, if that's life-giving, that's life-giving. But, like, I think for all of us, that's, like, different. It's different for each of us in terms of, like, what personally is, like, life-giving to us. And I think when we identify that and do the opposite, that's when it's numbing, right? So if we identify, like, hey, going to the gym is actually life-giving to me, but then I choose to go eat just a bunch of unhealthy things, like, that's when I'm not really, you know, facing my emotions head on. That's not when I'm really, like, diving into what my pain, what my hurt actually is. So it's, like, it's kind of like the knowing the right thing to do and then, like, choosing not to do it, or knowing what's going to, you know, take your mind off something, and, you know, knowing what's life-giving versus what's actually numbing, right? So just identifying what is actually life-giving to you is healthy and beneficial.
Yeah, this article talks about a little bit, almost the way you feel afterwards, you know, is a lot of, like, do you feel refreshed? You know, do you feel energized, or do you have that, like, kind of cloudy, exhausted feeling, you know? So that's why, to me, like, I can't just put social media in the whole category. You know, one of the things Emily and I love to do, like, we'll lay on the couch and we'll watch TikTok, and, you know, Emily's my wife, by the way, if you have never heard that name before, just to clarify. And, you know, we'll watch, like, TikToks of dogs for, like, you know, 30 minutes and just laugh. And it's, like, a great time. Like, it's just something that's, like, fun together. Then there's times where I, like, scroll endlessly through Instagram and I'm, like, more tired and I don't even know how long I've been there, and I'm just not even really thinking about anything. And I can tell the difference between, like, I just kind of checked out versus, like, this was quality time with somebody, or this was fun, or, you know, something like that. So I think there's kind of the, you know, the afterwards that feels, you know, really important as well. So I think, you know, there's these lanes of just understanding what it is, but I think there's also another lane of to say, you know, well, what do we actually do about it? One of the big parts of the conversation that we had in this past week in Wired and Reset was talking about how Jesus was fully present and fully engaged with his emotions. It wasn't, I think sometimes in our culture, we feel a lot like, oh, if you're mature, you don't show emotion,
right.
And emotional gets a bad tag. Like they're an emotional person. Yeah. And generally speaking, that's negative. And hopefully we can do something here to reverse that kind of stigma, because I don't think that's true at all. And so we talked about several examples where Jesus, showed his emotion and passionately and for people to see, and he was perfectly emotionally healthy. So I think one of the things that, Matt, I've heard you talk about that I'd love if you expanded on a little bit is, how do you know that God cares at all about our individual emotions? Like, why should we believe we're a speck on this planet, speck in history? Why should we believe that like God is actually concerned with the way that we feel? Yeah.
Well, so when I first became a Christian, like that was my number one like question is like, I'm one of 7 billion. Like I'm just, in my statistic, in my number, like I didn't really fully understand the full love and kind of that context of God. And so when I was growing up, really early in my faith, I was like, like any high schooler, but I never, went through COVID, so I can't even, empathize of being in high school right now. So it's like, you still have your emotional things, your things that you go through. And I just like, I never understood that like God could actually be a part of the process of my emotions. I never really understood that he actually genuinely cares about how I'm feeling. So I think like one, just having that awareness that he does care about, our emotions. And, I think one of the places that we can find that is definitely in the New Testament with the person of Jesus. And in Hebrews, it actually shows that like Jesus cares about our emotions. He empathizes with our weaknesses. And even if we took it back to the story that we talked about in Wired and Reset, the story of Lazarus, like, so Jesus goes to this town and the sisters of Lazarus come at him and are angry because, he's claiming to be this Lord, he's claiming to be this God. And they're saying like, hey, like if you would have been here, my brother would not have died. Right. And they're just kind of throwing this on him. And in that moment, since he is God, he had full power to raise Lazarus in that moment to make a quick fix. And I think a lot of times in our lives, like when we go to numbing, that's what we try to do. We try to do a quick fix. Let's get our mind off this. Let's not deal with this problem. Let's not face this head on. And we try to do the quick fix. The quick fix in that moment for Jesus would have been just like in that moment when Martha and Mary are yelling at him, like, hey, quick fix. Let's just do it. Let's just raise him. No, but instead he listens to them in that moment. He then walks to the tomb where Lazarus was buried, goes in, and Lazarus was buried for about 3 days. And so he goes in, he smells those smells, he sees everything. And, in that moment, shortest verse in the New Testament, shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. He processed his emotions. He did all of those steps and then saw Lazarus and then raised him from the dead. And so for us, like we know that Jesus empathizes with our emotions, and he perfectly showed that in the story of Lazarus and many examples in the New Testament in terms of him walking alongside people in their frustrations, in their hurts, and he genuinely has a care for people, and he will also be a part of the solution to fixing the problem. And so for us, when we, allow God in and we, allow him to be a part of our pain and allow him to be a part of our hurt, it allows us this sense of peace and the sense of awe to know that he's walking alongside us every single step of the way. And he's not just trying to do a quick fix, in our process of pain and our process of hurt. So that to me is like super helpful. And I think the story of Lazarus perfectly paints a picture of like how he walks alongside us. And he's not trying to just make a quick fix, but he actually genuinely cares about what we're going through.
Yeah, and I love that in that story that you just shared too, like the reality is like Jesus is a guy, Jesus is a male. And in our culture, whether it's controversial to talk about or not, I mean, you just recognize that on average, it is more acceptable for a guy to try to hide his emotions, to try to be like, that's just like, oh, that's manly, like that's grown up, like I'm not going to share, I'm not going to be vulnerable. And so I love, in this example, if it says like Jesus is weeping, which we talked about, that doesn't sound like one tear. That sounds like he's breaking down, that like the fullness of the moment.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between crying and weeping.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so, that kind of moment. And so for me, I just think, especially for like, middle school, high school guys that are listening to this, that's such an amazing thing to recognize now versus like, in your 40s or 50s to be like, wow, like vulnerability is not weakness. It actually takes strength to say like, I am going to risk, here's who I am. Here's what I'm feeling. This, I am upset. I am angry. Like this is what I'm processing. This is what I'm going through.
It takes risk to tap into love and creativity. So everything Brene was saying that like we lose when we're not vulnerable, like it takes a lot of strength to go in and dive in to be like, hey, if I really genuinely want love from other people, if I want to tap into my full potential and live a fully alive life, it takes a lot of courage to just open up to somebody close to you, open up to a friend, small group leader, whoever it is, and let people in and be vulnerable. So it takes a lot of strength.
Yeah, and I think it completely does, because it takes a strength of really knowing who you are to a certain degree. I mean, to be able to do that takes a certain amount of self-confidence, to be able to say, like, this is me. For example, I think about the verse in Proverbs that says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, in Proverbs 3:5. I love that concept of like trusting in the Lord, because, when we're trying to trust in, what people think of me or how they perceive me or whatever it might be, it's like, no, I'm just going to do what God has told me to do. I'm going to trust who he says I am. Like, I'm made in his image. And so at the end of the day, like, me being vulnerable to others, like, my identity is not on the line here when I do this, whereas if my identity is completely wrapped up in, what he thinks of me or what she thinks of me or what that crowd thinks of me, all of a sudden, I'm not going to be vulnerable with any of those things. And I additionally like this verse in this season, because I don't know if you guys identify with this, but just as much as has been taken away from us in this season, still, I often find myself still hoping in more circumstances. I still hope, like, I hope college football, comes back or whatever it might be. Or I hope, everybody can go back to school, or I hope whatever it might be.
Yes.
And even though we keep having circumstances let us down, we keep hoping for, more circumstances in the future. And I'm just continuing to realize at some point, like, I've got to shift what it is that I'm putting my trust in. And if instead of future circumstances, I put it in the person who is worthy of my trust and listen to what he says about me, that allows me to lean in. Like, that allows me to connect with others. That allows me to have the strength to be vulnerable when I'm doing that. So I know that's kind of complicated, but somehow that's all connected. Trust, knowing who we are, the ability to lean into relationships, all those things are connected. So I think one of the other things that we were talking about was how the opposite of numb is not necessarily like, just now like feeling all the time or something like that, or, these extreme feelings up and down. The opposite of numbing is actually connection. It's really like connecting with others. It's allowing, people to see who you are, and connecting with, your Heavenly Father, which is just, I think, a huge piece of this also, to say, like, you can't do this on your own. I don't know. Would you guys have anything to say to that or add to that, to just be like, this isn't about going and trying really hard. This is really about connecting with other people in the season and knowing that you're not alone in the season.
Yeah, I can start. I think for me, and I was telling you this a little bit yesterday, I think I'm like both an underreactor and an overreactor. So like when it comes to my emotions, like I feel like I'm out of whack with like everything I'm feeling and all that stuff. But for me, it's like if there's something personal that I'm going through and I'm hurt and it's a trauma and all that stuff, I tend to overreact and I tend to like, blow that up on people and all that stuff. But when someone is coming to me and sharing something that they're going through and traumas and, things that, they're going through in life, like I tend to underreact and I tend to downplay that. And when I do that, I've noticed that like I have zero empathy with this person. And so like for me, what I'm trying to work on is try to like be more empathetic towards other people's problems, because they're going to, you're going to need them when you're going through something. And there's just a good common like empathy there when I'm able to understand like, hey, my friend is actually going through something right now, and I need to just sit with them. Like, Jesus showed, like, just I need to sit with them. I need to be with them in this moment. And for me, I'm just like, man, I just want to, quick fix. I want to get past this. And I just need to learn how to like be a little more empathetic and know that my community, my small group, my, the group that's around me, my group of friends, like they genuinely do care about me as a person. And so when I'm able to sit with them, I know that they're going to be able to sit with me in those moments. So,
yeah. For you two, I was wondering, as Enneagram 2s, helpers, so always serve, always thinking about others' feelings. What does it look like for you guys when you're fully engaged? Like in your healthy moments, when you are operating out of your core identity, when you are engaged, when you're being vulnerable, what does that look like for you when you're like, man, I'm fully alive. This is what I was designed to be.
Yeah, I think actually what's funny is I think we are probably the opposite of Matt. Like we're like empathy, like grenades, and we'll like soak up everybody else's feelings, but like our own are so hard to deal with, and they're so gross. And it's funny because I feel like we're like the like complete opposite, but both of those situations like block us from that community, because your friends really do want like from you. You have to give and take, and that's so hard for me. And I feel like you guys are so good at like dragging things out of me, because I'm like, hey, because obviously I am not good. Like sometimes like I can have like my arm arm is hanging off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you want me to pick that up for you? You know, like I can't connect to my own feelings because I'm so afraid to. And I feel like that's just something I think that's my biggest struggle for sure. Like, I don't know how you feel.
I definitely think it's the same. Just I find myself constantly taking on more than I can handle just because like I don't want to turn people down. Like I always want to be there and like I want to help, I want to volunteer, and like I want to take on more of a load, but then at the same time like inside I'm like so overwhelmed, so stressed, like I don't want to let anyone down, but like I want to put like my best effort into everything. So it's just like I don't know how to say no, but I don't want to say no. I just, for myself, I have to, but that's me.
And I think with all this, what's interesting, whether somebody can relate to our personality types or not, is connection seems to be the answer to all of that. You know, for you guys to connect with somebody who really can see your heart, who really can know how you are when you say you're fine, and they can like look you in the eyes and tell like you're about to break down into tears and you're like, you're not fine, you know, that's huge. But there's other people listening right now that they feel their own feelings strongly, you know, and they isolate and pull away, and their feelings can become reality and just overwhelming, you know, overwhelming sorrow or overwhelming anxiety or loneliness. And they're like, gosh, no, I'm trying to manage my feelings because my own feelings are intense. I don't have the ability to, you know, engage with somebody else's. And so I think whichever you are, the answer is still connection. You know, it's still knowing that you're not alone, somebody to come alongside you and help and process. In fact, on this list, that's kind of the three things. Matt, you've already hit on a couple of these, but it says, you know, steps to stop emotionally numbing is 1, acknowledge and stay mindful about like, what are the behaviors? Just like, you know, start to be aware. So, you know, when I, you know, do feel this way, do I feel recharged afterwards, or do I feel more numb or more tired or more cloudy afterwards? And then 2, you know, start being intentional with the ones that are more restoring, that are more life-giving. Like, okay, now that I know which ones are which, I'm going to put more energy into the ones that are life-giving. And then the third one is to learn how to lean into the discomfort of hard emotions. And I think that, I mean, that's just a huge growth life step. The more we stop trying to avoid pain or avoid discomfort, and that's what's wild about the season. We've just been thrown into a lot
pain
of discomfort, you know, a lot of like against our will, like we just don't really get to choose. But I think when you stop like feeling like, man, I have to run from that every time, because there's something in that for me, like I'm going to grow in that, or I'm going to connect with somebody, I'm going to discover something about myself or discover something about God, that there's always growth in that. I think some of the hope starts to like be restored, to say, okay, bad circumstances are good. There's still reasons to be hopeful. Bad circumstances are good. I can still connect with people and connect in my relationship with God. So, you know, hopefully, you know, some of these conversations we're having over the next couple of weeks kind of lean to that and point to that. So we're about to wrap up here. I think we're towards the end of our conversation. Is there anything I missed? Anything that you guys felt like you wanted to add? Or
nothing related to the conversation, but I want to bring this up. 10 minutes before we started, so context, I asked Jordan yesterday, hey, what should we wear for the podcast?
Yeah, we need y'all's opinion on this.
We need your guys' opinion. So as you guys can see, the 3 people around me, they're dressed great. They look great. They're great people. I talked to Jordan yesterday. I said, hey, like, should we dress casual for the podcast? You said to me, yes. You said yes, dress casual.
I did. I can own that.
Okay, look at what you're wearing. Look at what everybody's wearing. Look at what I'm wearing. I feel like I'm super underdressed for this podcast.
Yeah, so I think you look great, Matt. You know, Matt's in basketball shorts. You maybe can't see that on camera.
Yeah.
So he's been, you know, a little frustrated with me, which is understandable. I think we just recognize that there's a range to that. So, you know, to be fair, like a robe is casual, you know, and so like that counts as well. You could have shown up in slippers.
Sure.
Business casual is a lot more dressed up than we are right now. So
you did not say business casual.
To make you feel better, Matt, like Mel and I wear this every day. So like this is our casual.
This is casual.
No, I'm good with you guys. We're focusing. Like we're focusing here. No, it's good. You've known me for 7 years. You should know what my casual is.
Yeah, that was my mistake. I could have been more proactive to align us on that. So
that's good. You look good though.
Well, thank you, sir. Yeah, as do you. I think love big, dream big is very appropriate.
Heck yeah, so. Absolutely.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you all for tuning in. If you have stuck with us to this point, we're going to be releasing, you know, one of these with every episode that comes out, and adding more context to our conversations that we begin in those episodes. So I do think it's really important to make sure you're following us on Instagram, our Transit, our Inside Out accounts, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel so you just don't miss anything. We have a lot more content coming out in this season, as well as a lot of ways to connect. So we're going to have a lot of opportunities. Hangouts are coming, ways to connect, ways to get together in person. Driveway groups are coming. All of the details and all of that are coming. if you're watching this later in 2020 and you come across this past August of 2020, then you could pretty much just stop right now. But if you're watching this as this comes out, it is important because this coming weekend, actually August 16th, we're going to have our first all grade Zoom call. So that means there's literally going to be a Zoom call for 6th grade, a Zoom call for 7th grade, all guys and girls in one call all the way, through our incoming seniors. And we're just going to kind of talk about what is coming up. Then we'll have another episode of Wired and another episode of Reset coming out the weekend of the 22nd. And then right now, driveway groups will be happening on the 30th. So there's a lot of really cool things coming up. And again, the details for all that are going to be in those platforms. So just make sure that you're following those. Otherwise, thank you guys for tuning in. Hang in there, and we can't wait to connect soon.